Good morning or afternoon or welcome to You Just Woke Up, Richard. It's nice to see you. How are you?
I'm doing good. How's it going over there?
We're doing okay. It's rainy, so I'm having a the day, but
Well, it's
that's
Canada,
neither
so
here nor
therefore it's
there.
still winter.
Yeah, yeah. So tell me where you are. Tell me what you do.
I am currently, where I am is currently in my mother's basement in just outside of Edmonton, Alberta, Canada.
Hmm.
I've been here for almost 3 weeks now. My first 2 weeks back home, I was on quarantine. Um, and so I literally didn't leave the basement except for to get food.
Hmm.
Um, I've been here. I am the owner of Global Artisans, and we are importers of fair trade goods from basically around the world, but primarily our biggest thing is House of Embroidery threads and ribbons from South Africa.
I love them.
Yes, and people love your designs, dear.
Yeah, I love them. So Richard and I work to get together a little bit. I do some embroidery designs for him, and I was the luckiest person in the world to be able to last summer actually visit House of Embroidery in Johannesburg, South Africa. So y'all can look on my YouTube channel elsewhere, and I have
And on the
a
main
video tour,
and on the main page of our website
which
it is
is
globalartisans.shop.
I'll put it in
SHOP.
the links down
Yeah.
here. So.
But on the main page is the video that you did.
Excellent,
So
excellent.
you
Yeah.
get so you get lots of credit there.
Well, you should go to the shop instead of my YouTube page then, because they have all the stuff that you can order and do. Oh, I have to show you. I think the last time we saw each other, I was
Yes,
working on this and
I
I
love those.
finished it.
I love those. I love those. I'm working on samplers for the booth, so
Excellent.
like to show what the threads and ribbons are like. So like as you saw the Catherine Redford one with the well, I'm doing one with silk right now.
Oh, I love
And
this.
I'm nowhere near as skilled, but let's see if I can get this up here. Oh,
Careful now.
I'm just
Oh,
doing all
nice.
the different colors.
That looks really cool.
Because one of the things I actually noticed when I started doing them, and by the second one, I really noticed it. When you see the ribbons on the cards, because of the changes in the how, and they're actually quite fast color changes on the ribbons,
Mhm.
that you weren't seeing all the ribbons, all the colors on the cards not clearly. So I figured doing this, people will be able to see what the length of ribbon looks like.
They look really nice.
It's going to take me. It'll take me throughout the duration of the quarantine to get it done.
Well, now you have something to keep you occupied, right? Uh,
Yeah,
so this is really unusual for you because you are usually on the road nonstop, vending at all
yeah,
the different shows.
yeah. I This is the longest break I've had since the heart attack. So, and that was 2.5 years ago.
Mm.
Um, usually, usually I come home for December, like mid-November to mid-January, and maybe June.
Mhm.
But right now, it's like this is going to be the longest. I don't foresee going back down to the U.S. to do the shows until I'm thinking July. Right now, they're talking of some promoters are saying, "Oh, we'll have this first weekend of June," but I don't see that happening. I really don't see that happening. Um, so July is probably going to be the earliest. I've been talking to the promoters. I talk to them frequently about
Mhm.
what's going on. And I think we're going to have a very contracted July, August, September, October, and up to Thanksgiving. Um, but if we have that at all, right
Yeah.
now, everything's up in the air.
So is your business going to survive this? How are you making it through?
I'm privileged. I have never said that I wasn't privileged. I can survive this. I am worried about House of Embroidery. I am worried about groups like that we work with because the longer we're off, like the the more time between them getting orders in, because we don't do the same volumes of sales that online that we do in person. Now, if
Right.
so, I'm trying to rethink how we do everything. Um, and quite frankly, it's like if I just focused on wholesale, well, the stores aren't open.
Right.
So that doesn't make a whole won't have a huge impact until the
Yeah.
stores get back.
People
Until
really aren't buying anything now except for elastic and
yeah, elastic and batik
mass
fabric.
material. Yeah.
And a lot of people are well, I've talked to some other companies and they're doing brisk internet sales, but it's still nothing compared to a show.
Yeah.
And so we're all sitting there. There's, I won't say survival of the fittest, but those who are able to adapt best are going to be most successful. Those who have, and this is rare, those who have the little bankroll behind them that they can sit there and take a step back and not worry about it too much, they're going to survive. One of our suppliers in the US, her husband's a teacher. He's not working either. So you sit there, you just wonder, and it's like when people are complaining about, oh, I have to cancel my trip, had to cancel my trip to this, I was supposed to be here, there. That's when you're looking at the small businesses that are sitting there wondering whether they're going to survive, not if, not when, but whether. And that's going to be a real challenge for them. And I'm in a position of privilege. I have a little bit of money stocked up that I can cover my basic expenses. Basically, we're at a situation where everything we do online is going pretty much directly to South Africa to help them out.
Yeah.
We had been working on some major contracts for them at the start of the year, and everything's on hold. So, and they are not back at work until at least the middle of May because of the quarantine in South Africa. The country's been shut down. So even if we could get the orders for them, they
They
can't.
can't fill them.
They can't fulfill them. They can't go into the office and fill them.
Right.
So, so as I said, I'm not worried about myself so much. It's others that I'm worried about.
Yeah. Me too. Yeah. I'm in the same privileged place where I don't need my income to
Mhm.
survive. You know, I
Yeah,
don't,
with privilege comes
I'm,
responsibility.
yeah, it is. My stash is disappearing because I'm sending it away to people who are making masks and doing good things with it.
Well, I don't have a stash.
But,
I
but, but it, but you know, that's where it belongs. You
yeah.
know, it's the same thing. I have a stash. I remember back in the day where I had to skip lunch to buy a fat quarter. I did that for a long time. I needed the fabric more than I needed lunch.
Well, and that's the thing. It's like the
But I'm so
collecting of
far beyond that.
yeah, the collecting of fabric is one thing. People building up their stash is one thing. But if we look at it, it's like people are buying the fabric. It's like, oh, I like this fabric. Someday I will use it. Someday I will find a project for it. Today's the day.
Yeah,
This is what you're
absolutely.
doing. And I've actually, because I'm not a sewer, I could not sew a straight line to save my life. Um, and to be frank, I've never ironed before, so ironing ties for people is kind of an exercise in stupidity. And uh but people, and I've been sitting there sending me masks knowing that I'm doing a lot of stuff, and apparently there's a ton of them sitting for me in Paducah waiting for me, because once we get back, it's going to be mask mandatory. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. The number of people that go to these shows, it's going to be mask mandatory.
Yeah, it'll be
And so
good.
people might as well make masks.
Right. Good. Well, Richard, how are you handling things personally? Are you mentally okay?
One of the interesting things, well, mentally okay. Hello, when have I ever been mentally okay? Um,
Well,
I'm known as being a bit bat crap crazy at the best of times. No, but seriously, usually when I come home. Uh, so we're getting to the end of that because this is like 5 weeks being at home. Usually, when I come home, the first month or so, I cocoon.
Mm-hmm.
So I sit there, watch TV, do a little, a few things. So my routine for coming home hasn't actually changed much. I'm used to this cocooning thing. And that's been known for since I started doing the shows, what, 10 years ago.
Yeah.
That the first little while that I'm home, I just don't, I just avoid people and don't talk to people because I need to de-stress. Like being around the crowds at a show is very, very stressful for me.
Mm.
And so I just did it. And so I usually spend the first few weeks decompressing. And
Right.
so I'm used to this. But usually by like week 6, I'm stir crazy like you wouldn't believe and want to get out of here and everything like
Ready
that.
to go
So
again.
that hasn't come up yet.
Oh,
Um,
that's good.
and so, I mean, and I actually, before coming here, I spent 2 weeks on self isolation in Paducah
Mm.
because if I had doing the shows, we're at very high risk of catching stuff because every week
You're
we're in
around
a different
everybody.
city, um, and things like that. So we're all at high risk of catching things.
Mm-hmm.
And so if it was going around the shows, so before coming home, because mother's late 70s, something like 78 or something like that.
So you
Uh,
waited 2 weeks before you came home to
yeah,
protect your mother.
to make sure I didn't have cooties to bring home to her. And
You're a
so
good boy.
yeah. And so we did that. And it's right now, it hasn't been like there's been moments of doubt, there's been moments of stress, but
Mm-hmm.
it hasn't been that overwhelming angst that a lot
That's
of
good.
people experience. Like
That's good.
uh, when we're talking about the small businesses down there, it's like, will they survive? It's like they're not having a good time mentally of it. They're
Yeah.
almost every waking moment they have is worried about what's going to happen.
How are things being handled in Canada?
Um, Totally different than in the U.S.
Is everything on lockdown?
No, no. Um,
Huh.
Restaurants, yes.
Uh-huh.
Like the social distancing guidelines are definitely happening.
Mm-hmm.
Nightclubs are delivering alcohol so that people can say,
Yeah.
uh, but just this past week, garden centers and stuff were listed as essential services so that people can start. And the government's been like, we want you to grow your own vegetables and
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that because they are uh, because when they start vegetables are for the most part, like right now, they're brought in mostly from, let's say, California because of like it's still winter here, so if it's
Yeah.
fresh coming in from a different country, um and the government's like, the prices are going to spike really high,
Mm.
so grow your own vegetables.
So they're
uh
preparing you and giving you guidance and
one of the things
suggestions and
one
good
of the
things
things
to do.
Yeah, oh yeah, but one of the things we have to be mindful of, this is historical.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not just talking 1918, the Spanish flu epidemic and stuff like that. We're talking as a culture, Canada has been at war before Canada got repatriated its constitution in 1982. If England declared war on the country, Canada was automatically at war.
Hmm.
Um, so some of the great battles of the First and Second World War were actually Canadian regiments. Um,
What does that have to do with this now?
what does that have to? Well,
Tied in.
the, like in layman's term, the Canadian culture uh, is more used to the idea like of looking out for each other because
Very
it's
good.
always
That's it.
been. Yeah, and much more used to it. Where uh, post Second World War, particularly the U.S. has been because of the Cold War. Look out for yourself.
Mm.
In a country like Canada, it's like look out for others. And that's what you're seeing in Europe as well. Look out for others just as much as yourself.
Right.
And so it's been less traumatic for as a culture, as a nation, for us to stay at home. It's been less traumatic because we come from a culture where helping others is part and parcel of being a Canadian.
That's just what you do.
Yeah, it's just what we do. So it is less traumatic as a country. Now, we're in a country that it's people before profits. So uh, where the U.S. has the one-time $1,200 stimulus check that you may or may not qualify for. In Canada, it was automatic. Anyone displaced by the virus qualifies for $2,000 a month Canadian, $2,000 a month. So people, that's basically minimum wage type stuff, but you're basically getting a monthly income equivalent to working minimum wage.
Enough to pay your rent and
Enough to cover, and most apartments and stuff like that have suspended rents, suspended mortgages and stuff like that until the fall to get to allow people to focus on the necessities of life like food and stuff like that.
right.
And so people, it's been people first, so it hasn't been as impactful as in some other countries.
Hmm. Yeah, there's something to be said for leadership that encourages people to look out for each other.
Yeah.
I don't know if I talked about it on any of the other Zoom chats already, but last time I was in Canada, it was at the start of the Syrian refugee crisis.
Uh-huh.
And every community center, every church, like every organization, um, they were having bake sales. They were just raising funds because every single one of them was getting ready to sponsor a refugee family. Like
Yeah.
my hostess had like 400 banana bread loaves covering everything in her kitchen for the bake sale that they were having because they were getting ready to bring in refugees
and
because
if you and if you
that's what you
remember,
do.
yeah, 3 years ago when the ban was put on, at the time, refugees coming from other countries to the US, and the first thing Trudeau said was, "Come here, we'll help you."
Right.
And
Yep.
there's actually footage of news footage from back then of people, like, because there's parts of the border that are very, very transparent, that you can just walk across the street basically to get to Canada, and the police had set the RCMP had set up checkpoints at these places, not to refuse people and stuff, but it was like, well, there's one where they're like, the guy, as soon as the person, she had arms full of stuff with a baby and a young kid and stuff like that, and as soon as she crossed the line that demarcated the border, the RCMP went down, grabbed the stuff from her, helped her into the car. And with a welcome to Canada, this is the process.
Yeah, I have a cousin who is Cuban who was able to defect to Canada, and within 2 years, he and his wife and daughter, he was able to bring them, were all citizens. And so
Yep.
I just admire and respect the welcome and open arms that Canada offers. I mean, I've been trying to put my finger on it since I've been there, what the difference is. Like when I was in the restaurants, the waiters were so nice. And it's not like they're not nice here. I've been to lots of restaurants that are nice here, but they're where the staff are just super friendly. But up there, it was just like, I can't exactly describe what it is. They were just welcoming and friendly, and it's like there's no barrier between people. It's, oh, I see you, you're my friend.
Yeah.
It was
Well,
lovely.
it's that cultural thing. It's
Yeah,
that where we're raised to think about others just as much as ourselves.
yeah.
And I've seen the meme online so many times over the past decades, that it was in relation to Nancy Reagan, that she didn't care about this until she knew someone. Like, she didn't care about HIV/AIDS until her friend Rock Hudson died. She didn't care about this other thing. And then and as a culture, we don't wait for it to impact us to think about the consequences. So that is one of the things. Don't get me wrong. We have an extreme right wing faction in this country too. We have all that, but we just have is a different culture into it. We've had my parents emigrated to Canada in 1967 from England, specifically to implement national health care in Canada. Because when that was introduced in 1967, my dad was a doctor, my mom was a nurse, and so we've had it since then. It's not a debate; it is we have it, and because we look for what's good for the community is good for ourselves. The whole idea of it takes a village. Now, my academics, I'm a socioanthropologist, and one of the whole things.
Van's embroidery thread at quilt shop.
Yeah.
It's amazing, isn't it, what we end up doing?
It all ties in together. When I was in university, I was working with First Nations groups in Canada. And I did that professionally as well after university. I was one of the youngest executive directors in Canada at the time for urban nonprofit Aboriginal referral centers. I was and that is what transitioned into doing all this, because it was I was raised on First Nations because my parents worked on First Nations. I was raised so I had a thing. And in the early 2000s, I went to Africa to work with community groups and self-sufficiency projects to help them develop. I have a huge issue with the way a lot of development goes, based upon my experiences in Canada. And like, the bookcase behind me, they're almost all development type books. But the way development is pretty much the white savior complex type thing, where you're
for sure. I know better than you what you need.
Yeah, exactly. And my specialty, when I graduated university and was working with the First Nations organizations, the very first thing I was taught was how to do strategic planning to take into account cultural differences. So basically cross-cultural strategic planning, which is exactly what I was training groups in Uganda to start with.
And is that how you ended up in the embroidery business?
Yep, that's how I ended up doing that. It's like, that's how it all transitioned. So it's not that strange that I am doing this. It does make sense. And if you've seen in a show, I'm very much a showman. I'm a bit of a character. And so, but even though that is a lot of work to do, it's a lot of stress, but I'm a character. And but that's how you go from being a sociologist to doing this kind of work.
Very good. Well, Richard, it is absolutely delightful to have this conversation with you. I really appreciate it, and to get perspective on what's going on in different parts of the world.
Yeah, I love chatting with you. And I'm just trying to, because are you Chapel Hill itself?
No, I'm next to Chapel Hill, between Chapel Hill and Raleigh and Cary.
Okay, because my brother's girlfriend, her father just passed down there.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Well, it's like between you and French Connections, because they're just on the other side of Chapel Hill.
Right.
You might be seeing a bit more of me than you'd like in the near future, going down to help her with that.
Oh, well, safe travels if you do.
Yeah. If they open the border up, because it's now been extended for another 30 days.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So who knows when I'm going to get back to work.
Any of us.
Yeah.
Any of us. Well, thank you so much for spending time with me. I really appreciate it. Say hi to all of our people.
Hello.
And I encourage everybody to hit the shop. Go say hi.
Yeah, globalartisans.shop. You'll love what you see.